save jobs, to keep the wheels turning, and also to keep relevant in these times. And it talks about preparation, and I think the key word here is agility, a way for them to bounce back. And also there's a combination of being tough, but also being human while doing that. And when I come to tough but being human, I think this is an opportune moment to introduce our first speaker. So if you have any questions, please do pop your questions in the chat box. I'm not quite sure. There's not really a space for Q&As, but we'll definitely respond to them offline, and leave your contact details for us so that we can be in touch with you if there isn't an opportunity to facilitate a Q&A session. But speaking about tough but human, a lady that's very close to my heart, my colleague, my partner in crime, and she is also the ebony and I'm the ivory in the campaign. So somebody is very near and dear to my heart, my colleague, Ambiguity. She's our Chief Marketing Officer and the First Lady of the campaign. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you to Ambiguity, to share with us her learnings and to really set the tone for a wonderful, productive and uplifting session today. So without further ado, over to you, Happy.
Thank you so much, Janine. What a warm way to kick off today's proceedings. And yes, I do acknowledge you as my ebony in the mix. Thank you so much for setting the tone, for opening up the session today, but just for setting an emotive tone to the discussion today. And like you rightfully said, Janine, today is a little different from all the many webinars we have hosted during these unprecedented times, where we've spoken about all sorts of things, from finance to how to keep your business afloat, to programs that are out there that are designed to help your business and all of that, because that's what makes the DNA of what Proudly South African is about. But today's chat is really a very personal one, so to speak, because in the midst of all of that you've mentioned, in the course of doing business, in the course of navigating life, from an entrepreneurship perspective, from a corporate perspective, from a work perspective, there's a big element that most of us as people and as human beings and as professionals have unintentionally ignored and unintentionally left behind, because our focus has really been to survive this pandemic and these unprecedented times that no manual could have prepared us for it. So with that said, like introduced, my name is Happy Ngidi. I am the Chief Marketing Officer at Proudly South African. And in my team, the marketing division, I have 11 team members, the majority of whom are women. Something that I pride myself with very, very much, very vocal about it. And I've always said, irrespective of where I am in the corporate world, I will use my voice, I will try and use my influence, and I will be as vocal as I possibly can about the importance of ensuring that women are included in the mix. And not because women must be included because, shame, the business is feeling sorry for them. My principle is a very stern one and a very focused one, that should be the case, because we have incredible women in the country and incredible women who are capable and who are skilled to do the work that needs to be done in the corporate space. So with that said, I just wanted to share with you in terms of what my department within the operation and the business of Proudly South African looks like. So just to get straight into because I do not have have limited time, and there's quite a few things that I want to touch on. And I want to kick off by saying that I believe in the principle of being the difference you want to see in the workplace. It doesn't help, and irrespective of who you are in the workspace, what your profile is, what your responsibility is, and what you have signed on to do in a business, is that you have got in your little corner, be able to be the difference that you want to see. My team will tell you that I live by the most two critical principles in my life, and I practice that in my workspace and also in my personal capacity, and that is empathy and kindness. Two simple, very simple words: empathy and kindness. For me, empathy resembles a very big part of what makes a human being. It resembles, it shapes one's character. If you are not able to empathize and put yourself in somebody else's shoes for 1 second, you will really never have an appreciation of what it is that they go through on a daily basis in the work environment. So empathy for me is really, really, important. I come from a background where I was an entrepreneur who owned a franchised restaurant. And for me to buy into that restaurant, it had nothing to do with how much money I may have had at the time to be able to invest in that franchised restaurant. It was about investing time in the operation of the business before I was even allowed to buy it, to invest time to work in different departments of the restaurant, for me to be able to be a leader or an owner of a business who could empathize and be able to understand my team in that business. So it went from, for example, in a nutshell, from being able to work in the scullery, I needed to understand what it feels like for somebody who works in a restaurant, which is a value chain, by the way, that is critical to the success and the operation of a restaurant. I needed to understand what it felt like for somebody to work in the scullery and wash glasses and plates and cutlery and crockery. Then once I passed that phase of the training, I then moved to the pizza area of the business. I needed to make sure and know how to make the pizza myself. What goes into it, how to make the dough, how to prepare it, how to freeze it, how to thaw it, how to cut it, how to roll it out, all of that. Then I moved to the bar area to be able to mix all the cocktails and be able to pour the drinks and be able to serve the customers and all of that. I needed to be able to work in the grill area and in the pasta area. It was an Italian restaurant, Primi Piatti, and be able to to make great pizza and be able to have the know-how behind their incredible sauces that make their pastas. I needed to be able to be a waiter on the floor and deal with great customers and deal with horrible customers, because that's the reality in that space, and be able to deal with the challenges that waiters are able to that are faced with on a daily basis, and that is empathy. And that was the biggest investment that I ever made. Forget the fact that I bought the restaurant. The biggest investment was knowing how to run that business from the minute the door was open to the minute the door was closed at 11 o'clock at night, to be able to scrub the floor and not be ashamed, irrespective of what people said. Because at the time, some people walked into the restaurant and found me scrubbing the floors, and they had all sorts of opinion about, you know, how life has dealt with me, and I now am employed by a restaurant where I am actually scrubbing the floors. But I kept my eye on the price, and the price was that I was planning on buying that restaurant as an owner-run business, which I did. And empathy, that's where I learned empathy. Kindness, it takes nothing away from being kindness. I have my favorite post that I always post at least every second week on social platforms, that everybody around the word kindness, and that has shaped me as a person. And this is why I'm able to be kind to my team. I'm able to be kind to them because I understand the principle of kindness. Kindness means knowing that everybody that you come across every day of your life, it doesn't matter where you come across that person. It might be in a retail store. It might be
Hello, everybody. It seems that Happy is experiencing some connectivity issues. So if it's okay, I think I'll jump in right now. And, you know, I had very, very bad manners, so please do excuse me. My name is Janine van Straten, and I head up strategy, stakeholder relations, and legal party South African. I'm always used to being introduced by Happy normally in these webinars, so I'm quite out of practice in terms of having made the introductions. So profuse apologies. I'm just checking if Happy is joining us. I see, there we go. I see Happy is back. So I'm going to hand over to
I'm so sorry. Okay, thank you so much. Sorry, I think I seem to have gremlins. I disappeared completely from the screen, but I'm here now. And I'm hoping everybody can hear me. So with that said, what we do know is that COVID-19, the isolation, the contact restriction, and the economic shutdown imposed a complete change to the psychological environment in affected countries and in South Africa. And these measures have the potential to threaten the mental health of employees significantly. I mean, we must be honest, everybody. During hard lockdown, when we started, we all anticipated that this lockdown thing will last at the very most 2 months. None of us anticipated the longevity, of what was then what we were exposed to. When we hit lockdown, month 3 and month 4, all of us, whether you want to admit it or not, including me as a leader of a team, lost my mind a little bit. And it was more the fear of the unknown, so to speak, for many of us. Even though the current crisis can bring with it opportunities for personal growth and family cohesion, disadvantages may outweigh these benefits. Anxiety, lack of peer contact, and reduced opportunities for stress regulation are main concerns. Another main threat is an increased risk for parental mental illness, domestic violence, and child ill treatment. So how do we then, and I specifically use the term during the pandemic, because the pandemic is still very much with us. We don't know for how long. We may be on level 1, but what we do know as a country and as a people and as businesses and as consumers and as human beings, we know that the pandemic is still very much with us. But while that is happening, we still have businesses to run. We still have to live. Life happens and life goes on, and we still have to, try and find ways to fit into the new norm, as it were. So these principles are what has carried me as a leader, for me to be able then to somewhat pass it on to my team. What COVID-19, the pandemic, has taught me, and a rude awakening for that matter, is that it is not a popularity contest. You will never be able to please everybody. It is not possible. Under normal circumstances, I used to say that the reality is everybody in the world, whether it's in the workspace, even at home, there's some element of order that is expected from human beings. Everybody reports to somebody. I report to a CEO who is my boss. He reports to the chairperson of the board, who is his boss. In fact, he is in a worse off situation than me or many of us in this instance, because not only does he report to the chair, to the board chair to the chairperson of the board, but there's the board members that he's accountable to. Even the president of the country is accountable to citizens of the country. Everybody has to report to somebody. Your children at home report into you as a parent. Can you imagine the disconnect and the mess if there wasn't that kind of order in the home? Everybody has to report to somebody. And reporting to somebody does not necessarily make you the most popular person at many given, in many a time, rather. Because there's tough decisions to be made. There's accountability in the fall. Work still needs to be delivered. And I always say, some of the team members will tell you this, I always say, I am a tough cookie in the work environment, and that's my history everywhere that I have worked, because I am a hard worker, because I get my hands dirty. I do not operate and control my team by remote control, from the comfort of my couch. It has never happened in my life. I do not know anything else but to get involved. But I always say, as tough as it may be, my heart. You know my heart. This is why I know every team's member's child's name. I make it my business to know, because I think outside of having a team in the work environment, the most important thing is that there's no team without human beings, ever. I do not have what I refer to as the A team in our working environment if I do not appreciate and acknowledge and embrace the fact that that team is human beings. During these times, the teams and me, I'm no different. We all went through different emotions, all sorts of emotions. Some of us may have been going through having lost a loved one through the COVID pandemic. Somebody may have lost a friend. Somebody may have lost their spouse. Somebody may have lost their job. A spouse may have lost their job. A sister and a sibling and a brother may have lost their job. A mother, a dad, a cousin, a relative, somebody close to you may have lost their job. And one way or another, that has potential to affect you as a person. So what I've learned from that is that, lend an ear to listen to your team members, irrespective of what it is. During the pandemic, like I said earlier on, we all lost our mind just a little bit, one way or another. and it is important to lend an ear to somebody, irrespective of what it is they're trying to tell you as a team. As much as I say that, I also needed somebody to lend an ear to me, to listen to what it is that I want to say, because if I operate from a place where I am emotionally and physically exhausted, I will not have the energy to be able to deal with 11 people who look up to me for guidance, who look up to me for me to be able to walk the journey with them. In the midst of all of that, we still needed some sort of consistency under very difficult circumstances. The consistency is that there's a business. We are all employed. All of us are employed. And none of us, whether you're a manager or you're a marketer or a PR person or a stock controller or a receptionist, some level of consistency still needed to happen, because it was informed by one thing. Do we all need our jobs? Do we all still need to be employed? And if the answer is yes, then that comes with a responsibility. That even when we worked remotely, we still had a responsibility to deliver to the business, because the business also has a responsibility to deliver to its principles. There needed to be control measures in place, some of which not popular, but very much necessary, because in the absence of doing that, then we all don't have jobs, which is the last thing that we needed. When you're dealing with the fact is, when you're dealing with tumultuous events like the corona pandemic, stress is unavoidable. When you thoughtfully plan and put systems, tools, processes, resources, and support in place specifically designed to mitigate stress, your employees and teams will be more engaged and productive, and all of you will be significantly less frazzled. As a manager, all I was asking for, or all I envisaged to do, was just to catch up with human beings, just to remind the team that your employer cares. Some of the team members are on this line today. I mean, there was one day where, and some of these things, no academic trajectory will prepare you for it. Some of it is humane. Some of it is common sense. Some of it is skill. Some of it is experience. I mean, my team will tell you that one day, out of the blue, I called a Zoom meeting, and when they got to the meeting, I said, "Don't worry about your notebooks. I don't want to talk to you about notebooks today. I just want to catch up with you as human beings. I want you to bring your dog to the screen. Let's get to meet him for the first time and say hello to him. I want you to bring the cat to the Zoom meeting. We just want to know," because most of the team members, by the way, spent a lot of time on their own in their homes, because they live on their own, and not with families and all of that. And I said, one of the team members, it happened to be their brother's birthday on the day. And this team member mentioned to us, "Today is my brother's birthday. That's what I'm doing." And I said, "Bring your brother to the Zoom meeting." And the brother showed up on screen. We sang happy birthday for a guy we've never met. That guy must have said to his brother, "Fiamo, what kind of people do you work for? How come they singing for me? They don't even know me." But that was not the point. The point was the fact that we needed to do something out of the ordinary to remind my team that they are human beings, and somebody out there who happens to be me cares about them. And I just want to talk to them about, how they've been coping, how they coping with not seeing their families who may be out of town for the longest time, how they coping with just their dog or just their cat or their little ones. I said to one of the 2 team members with little girls, and I said to you, when you gave birth, I did say to you that you will never have a time to yourself ever again. Do you see now what I mean? You can't take your baby to where you found them, unfortunately. You are stuck with them. So during lockdown, we all became teachers and tutors. Some of us became cooks. And, but that catching up with the team was probably one of the most important things that are small, very, very tiny, but probably one of the most important things that we got to do as a team. We've played empathy quiz. Empathy quiz is where I said to the 10 team members at some point, not necessarily during lockdown, but I said to them, write on a piece of paper, choose anybody in the team, write on a piece of paper the 2 of the most critical things that you miss about that person. And what an incredible, incredible quiz it was for us to get to know each other even better. But as I conclude my chat about this, I want to say this, that it takes 2 to tango. So there's the employer who has a responsibility that they give you the resources you need, they take care of you, they do everything in their power to avoid what we now see play out with, for example, at the SABC, where there's potential retrenchment, where people are losing their mind, which is the most, in my view, I think it is the most difficult thing to have to go through, to try and strike a balance, keep people employed, but then, the business says to you, you don't have money to pay those people. What do you do? I would hate for even my worst enemy to be in that type of an environment, to try and strike a balance in a corporate world, in a corporate space like that. It takes 2 to tango. So, there's a responsibility from an employer perspective, but there's also a responsibility that is expected from you as an employee, where you're expected to do things. We all have a cross to carry, as I conclude. Everybody has a cross to carry, which is my father's favorite line, which I never appreciated it as when I was a young person growing up at home. But today as an adult, I hear him. I feel like calling him every day and say, I know what you mean. We all have a cross to carry. I can't take my cross and give it to Janine. It's never going to happen. What must happen to her own cross that she needs to carry? We all have music to dance to. Music will be played that you need to dance to. I cannot dance to somebody else's music, because by the time my music gets played by the superpower, the powers that be, depending on what it is that you believe in, whether it's spirituality, whether it's God, whether it's whatever your belief may be, when your music plays, whether in a good way or a bad way or a challenging way, you need to dance to your own music. You can't expect, I'm a spiritual person, and the one thing that I've learned from my spiritual father in church, he always makes this example. You cannot take poison and drink it and expect somebody else to die. If that poison is meant for you, you're going to have to find a way to protect you from the poison that you've just taken. No one owes anybody anything. So during this time and beyond, whether pandemic or not, or whether we have a second pandemic in the future, whatever the case may be, if we just understood that nobody owes you anything. Nobody said it was going to be a walk in the park. If anybody ever said that, and there's a book that alludes to that, I'd like to get my hands on that book to try and learn from that. How do you build a team behind an argument? And my parting shot is this, is that during the pandemic and even now, I've heard all industries, hospitality, pharmaceutical, poultry, clothing sector, every industry have said, my industry is the most affected. I argue. And my argument is the most affected people in all of those industries are human beings. There's no industry without human beings. It's human beings, me and you and people, human beings have been the most affected, which then takes me to my closing comment, which is 2 things that I alluded to earlier on: empathy and kindness. Everybody that you come across every day is going through some sort of a challenge and a problem that you know nothing about. And my favorite line from Oprah that I live by, which she took from Martin Luther King, says everybody can be, not everybody can be famous and well known. However, everybody can be great, and greatness is determined by selflessness. Thank you so much, Janine. Thank you for the time.
Happy, thank you for that beautiful message. I am in the process of scripting 5 key takeaways I think that each one of our speakers can bring to the table. So almost a toolkit of sorts. And what I'd like to to take away from what Happy said today, and I think it was our opening line, be the difference you want to see in the workplace. That is key. And the two main qualities to achieve that is really through empathy and kindness. So thank you very much. Thank you, my Ebony, for your contribution today. And I think at the end of this, we'll have 5 key points from our 5 speakers. So that for me is the takeaway today. I just want to acknowledge Arnu van der Westhuizen, your question, what about persons with disabilities? If it's okay by you, I'm going to give all the speakers a chance today, and they might be able to answer with their accounts that they'll be sharing with us. We'll respond to you shortly. Thanks, Arnu. And then I'd like to introduce our next speaker. So Mandisa Matobela is the Deputy Chair of the Institute for Stakeholder Relations in Southern Africa. So Mandisa, I must admit to you, or confess to you rather, that I Googled you today, and I was completely blown away by your CV, a formidable trailblazer with your feet firmly rooted in the corporate world. And I'm so looking forward to your contribution today. And I think being in stakeholder relations and having a wonderful CV, there's so much that we can take away from you today. So I'm very, very excited to give you the floor now. And over to you. You're very, very welcome.
Thanks so much, Janine. Appreciate the opportunity to be here and to join you for this very important conversation. I must say that Google perhaps did a number on you there, but really looking forward to today's discussion. I've had a little bit of technical difficulty this morning and ended up having to dial in from my cell phone. So I do hope it doesn't fall over or do anything, unprecedented and embarrassing as often happened in this working from home environment. So thank you very much for the opportunity, and I'm looking forward to it. I was asked to prepare remarks for about 10 minutes, and so I don't deliberately have slides today because I thought, given the fact that we're talking about something that's affected a lot of us personally, it would be good to also have a bit of a personal conversation. And I was relieved that Happy didn't use any slides either, as our commander-in-chief really for this mission. And so I'm feeling very much encouraged by that. The topic for today's session really spoke to me in the sense that it appeals to very real and very practical concerns that are at the forefront, or at least should be at the forefront of every organization and every human being, as Happy said, as we are finding ourselves in this season. When we talk about rebuilding our teams during a time of crisis, I think there's 2 things for me that immediately come to mind. Crisis, which I guess before now we had never actually understood in the way that we understand it. I think we've never gone through a collective crisis as a world, and I think the opportunity to do that is very meaningful. We were on a call this morning and our CEO said something incredibly poignant, and he said, a crisis can either pull you together or tear you apart. And I think that's what we're seeing in a lot of homes, in a lot of families, in a lot of institutions and organizations, where the crisis is either pulling people together or it's pulling them apart. And I think it's a good reflection point for us as leaders in particular to really stand back and consider whether what we're seeing is teams pulling together or teams pulling apart, and what role we have to play in what we see transpiring and what we see happening in our work environments and in our homes, because working from home, where someone else said living at work, has really become the order of the day, and we can't afford for this crisis to do more harm than good. And I think the opportunity to reflect and to look at rebuilding is really important. The second thing that it's caused me to really reflect on is this idea of rebuilding your team after a crisis. And I guess the preferred outcome would really be that that team structure doesn't break down through the time of crisis. So I almost want to speak more about how we can perhaps, hold together and stick together and prevent having to do a fresh rebuild or a rebuild from scratch as we come out of the crisis environment. We know the second wave is almost upon us, and so there's quite a bit that we've got to contend with in that respect.
Mandisa, apologies, you went on mute. If you could just unmute yourself.
There we go. It wouldn't be a virtual meeting if someone wasn't on mute.
It's the quote of the year, I've been told. You on mute. That's the quote of the year. So we had to throw this in.
It's definitely become the quote of the year, Janine. Sorry about that. I was hoping that you heard the last piece, which was about really looking at how we preserve the team structure, how we preserve the home structure without having to do a complete rebuild. And I'm going to just share from some of my personal experiences during this time. Our office closed, as most offices did, upon the presidential announcement at the end of March, beginning of April. And we've been working from home ever since. So even though the lockdown has kind of eased up in the rest of the country, all of our staff are still very much working from home, except a select few who are essential workers or people who really need to be in the office in order to do work. And that's fundamentally changed our lives. And we've had to kind of work through this environment. One of the things that I've really had to contend and grapple with is how you lead in a time such as this. One of the popular frameworks that they use around leadership speaks to a VUCA environment. And I think we really find ourselves more than ever before in the midst of a VUCA environment. If we break up the VUCA acronym, we are really dealing with a V, a U, a C, and an A, and the V speaks to volatility. There's high volatility around COVID. We're not necessarily sure what's coming around the bend. There's changes all the time. People are working from home. Lockdown levels are tightening up and easing. Second waves are upon us, and we find ourselves operating in this really, really volatile environment. The second piece of it is uncertainty, and it speaks to us not really knowing when we're going back to the office or having an understanding of what's going to happen in the next presidential announcement. Rumor has it that there will be a family meeting tonight. I'm not necessarily sure whether that's been confirmed yet, but where every time we get invited to a family meeting by our head of state, we're not necessarily sure what he's going to say. Is he going to tighten up on lockdown regulations? Should people go and stock up their homes? And so we continuously find ourselves living with this uncertainty. And I think in the professional environment, it could be talks about departments, having to think about the way that they work, given the fact that sales are down or profits have been affected by the lockdown period. And there's this lingering sense of uncertainty. The C again being for complexity, looking at the fact that multiple factors are tied together. One would never have thought, that a flu, as it was called at the time that it began, that started in China, would fundamentally change our lives. But I think it speaks to the complex nature of the world in which we live. Complex because there are so many parts that are intertwined that we actually cannot separate or cannot divorce issues on occasion. And I think that's really what we are finding ourselves having to grapple with the integrated nature in which our world is currently operating, and how something that makes an impact in one sector can impact all of us. A little bit of load shedding was probably survivable when we were all working in the office environment. It's a little bit different now that we're working from home. Your ability to depend on the office generator is not necessarily going to protect you from load shedding. Eskom is probably now the most important, if it hasn't always been, national asset that we have in terms of keeping us all connected and keeping us all online. And we find that complexity has ways in which it impacts our lives, and we've got to help people to navigate their way through some of that complexity. And then the last one being ambiguity. When you operate in an ambiguous environment, it's often difficult to make decisions. It's difficult to be decisive. Should you make a career change at this particular point? Should we be starting a new opportunity? Should you be looking at opening a business? Should you be looking at moving your kids to a new school? It's all very ambiguous and very uncertain at this point in time. And so we find ourselves operating in this environment. And as leaders, where you're required to provide direction, it's often incumbent upon us to be very deliberate about the ways in which we navigate through these environments. And when I say as a leader, I think everyone has a sphere of influence through which they lead. And that sphere of influence where you may be your family, you may find that you are a leader on the family front, you may be a leader on the home front, you may have a leadership role that you play in a community group, you may have one in your body corporate, you may be playing a leadership role at work. But in the roles that we play as individuals, it's inevitable that at some point your voice has influence over people. And that's the leadership piece that I'm really speaking to today, because as Happy said, everyone has a role to play. And so it's about how we show up both as leaders and how we show up as individuals during this time. And so I've had the opportunity to really sit with myself as one of the people that live alone during this crisis. And it's given me some opportunities to really reflect in ways I haven't done in a long time. So in thinking about how we show up to VUCA environments as leaders in particular, in a period of volatility, what we definitely struggle to provide is direction, but what we can provide is vision. How clear is the vision that we're providing to our employees, to our families, to our community groups, to our church centers, if that's where you operate? But what's the vision that we're maintaining? What is the vision that we aspire to? And how much of our focus can we shift to the vision as opposed to the volatility in terms of making sure that we're navigating through those environments? Secondly, around the uncertainty. In the midst of uncertainty, what can be very helpful is understanding. If people understand all of the variables that are impacting them and what the moving parts are, even if there's nothing that we can do in terms of changing the uncertainty, providing a better sense of understanding, I found to make a profound difference in that respect. If I look at the complexity piece that we're looking at, while we can't untangle the complexity, what we can provide is clarity. And clarity is not always the answer to the questions. Clarity is rather helping people to understand what the key questions are and why some of those questions can't be answered, highlighting the dependencies and highlighting what we know and what we don't know, and how we can choose to show up in those moments and how we can choose to operate in spite of the uncertainty. Because uncertainty is not a license to not perform. Uncertainty is not a license to not show up. We all have a cross to carry, as we've heard, and we carry our cross regardless of whether we have uncertainty or volatility. And so providing a sense of understanding and a sense of clarity where you're able to, or where you have the influence to as a leader, can make a huge amount of difference. The last point that goes together with the ambiguity goes to something that Janine spoke to initially, and that's agility and adaptability. We might not necessarily know what's coming around the corner, but we need to prepare ourselves to be able to respond. Technology has probably never been more required and more in demand than it is now. And if you never heard of MS Teams before April, I'm sure it's a term you'll never forget for the rest of your life, because it's going to be a part of our lives. And so we've had to adapt. I had to adapt at the beginning of the session when I kind of realized that the laptop option is not going to work. We're going to have to move on to the phone. And being able to make those transitions and move through these environments, I think, is something that is challenging to all of us. But the better we get at doing it, I think the better we show up in environments where we're dealing with ambiguity and it's going to be required of us. I heard a quote recently that was shared by Lillian Barnard, and Lillian Barnard attributed it to Thuli Madonsela. So I'm going to cite both of them just in case I've missed it. But she said that one of the things that struck me the most about that reference said that we need to learn in life to dance, to have the audacity to dance on a moving carpet and to present the agility to keep up. And I think that's where we find ourselves. The carpet is invariably moving, and we need to learn to continue to dance on that carpet. And not only do we need to dance, but we need to have the agility and the adaptability to keep up with the demands of the dance. And so those are some of my personal reflections. I guess if I was to be a little bit more practical in using coaching ideology around this, Kenneth Blanchard and Paul Hersey have got a fantastic concept that they came up with a couple of years ago called situational leadership. And I'm not going to unpack it, but I am going to encourage you on the call particularly to go and look up situational leadership, because what it does very nicely is that it simplifies our leadership styles or our preferences of leadership styles as individuals into almost 4 quadrants. And it highlights 2, should I call them definitive capabilities when it comes to leadership. The first capability is directing. If your boss likes to say, or if your boss likes to give instructions most of the time as it relates to how things should be done, then you're dealing with a directive leader, or you're dealing with a directive leadership style. That's the one axis. And then you're dealing with support. So the supporting style would then be, kind of complementary to the directing style, in that the two of them are a little bit polar opposite, but have various points of intersection. And so the combination of the 2 styles at different points produces different styles of leadership. One of the styles of leadership that we often refer to in understanding situational leadership is the delegating style. We also have the directing style, the supporting style, and the coaching style. For the purposes of simplicity, I really want to focus on the items and individuals that underpin when you see those styles showing up. Often when we're dealing with people who are highly competent and highly confident, it's easy to employ a directing style, because those people seem to have a handle on how they're working and how they're doing. When we're dealing with the supporting style, we're dealing with people who are committed to their work, but really require a little bit of extra support and a little bit of extra push to get themselves over the line. It could be someone who's just started in a new team. It could be someone who's transitioned into a new industry. It could be someone who's going through a hard time. So those are the kind of reasons where you would expect to see a supporting style show up. The long and the short of it is that the 2 axes examine our competence and our commitment as individuals. And those 2 things are critical to keep in mind at this time, because the fact that we're going through a crisis impacts both of them. It impacts, for many individuals, their competence and their ability to wholly show up into a work environment. It could be they're dealing with a lot at home. It could be that they are financially strained at this particular point. It could be that they are overwhelmed by the new conditions that they find themselves in and are feeling incredibly disconnected. And so their competence would be affected. From a commitment point of view, you might be dealing with people who are affected simply because they're struggling to balance the priorities of delivering at work and delivering at home while being at the 2 places at the same time. And so if we know that we're dealing with human beings and individuals whose competence or commitment or both might be impacted by this, it requires that we as leaders really lean in to understanding our styles and being deliberate to show up more in a supporting and more in a coaching style of leadership towards our teams during this particular time, because it's very difficult to provide a directing style in a VUCA environment, as I had mentioned, and that could look different to all our teams. But I think the supporting piece, which becomes critical here, is really leading, in the sense that it's what causes us or drives us to show up in a humane and in a personal way as leaders during this time. I think the examples that were made earlier about how we start asking people personal questions, how we start asking them how they're doing and really listening. And I think when I say people, again, this shouldn't be taken as people that, people in organizations. This should be the people that we're leading. So if you're in a home environment, it's important to ask your children, how are they doing? And really leaning in to hear the responses and not just waiting for the fine thanks, how are you, which we've become accustomed to so much doing. So I think those opportunities to lean in, to provide support and to provide extra coaching, even if your ordinary preference would be a directing or a delegating style, this is an opportunity for you to build a different kind of muscle as the leader in a home or in the work environment, in terms of how we ensure that we almost insulate our people during a time of crisis, and how we ensure that we're not rebuilding from a place where people have been completely massacred by the crisis, but rather we're moving through a place where we've navigated the terrain together. And so those have been fundamentally significant. In closing, think about the things that have meant the most to me during this time. It's about being able to kind of see into people's homes, being invited into their spaces. We have implemented a couple of months ago, in fact, even before the lockdown, towards the end of last year, we created team time. And our team time is every Friday afternoon from 3:30 to 5. We're very deliberate about it. We leave the office, we go out for a late lunch, we have some drinks, we catch up, we talk about everything except work. And it gives us an opportunity to really stay connected. What we've done with team time during the period of the pandemic is that we've kept it. We do it virtually, but it's the only meeting that I actually require my team to turn their cameras on for, so that we can see each other. And then we have an opportunity to really engage with one another about things that are completely unwork related, and maintain that sense of connectedness during this period. And I've found that that's been really helpful for us. We also have weekly check-ins. So we've always had our weekly team meetings, and we've maintained those during this period, just so people get the sense that there are people that they can talk to, people who are connected to them, and people who are invested in them. And finally, I think the one thing that we've not been able to do very well is run stakeholder engagements in the normal sense that we would run them. A lot of our engagements in our space are face-to-face, and it's been, the dance for us has really been how we find creative ways to deliver a seamless and valuable, meaningful stakeholder experience virtually. And it's been fascinating to see some of the ideas that have come through. But by and large, being deliberate about not allowing the fact that we're separated in the physical to ensure that we're separated in every sense of the word. So making sure that we're not only having virtual connections, but that we're having meaningful virtual connections. And that's resulted in an incredible amount of value for us, culminating in a one-day team workshop that we did very recently, which I thought was incredibly helpful. So find tools, use tools around you that will help you ensure that you maintain quality connection, but you also are able to adapt to a remote world of work, because, as they say, this is our new normal. So those are my tips and some of my experiences, Janine, in terms of how I've been able to navigate this period and how I've tried to carry my people through the period. But as I said, it's a learning journey continuously. And I encourage you, if you haven't had the opportunity to look up situational leadership and how you as a leader can really lean in more on your supporting and your coaching style of leadership during this time to insulate your team. Thank you, Janine. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Mandisa. That's wonderful. You've given us some homework. I think in terms of doing some research about situational leadership and then focusing on coaching style in particular, I think that is so relevant and is really connected to leadership. So I know, and proudly I say, we ask the question: Are you a boss? Are you a manager? Or are you a leader? And I think the coaching speaks to that. And for me, the biggest takeaway is, with each challenge, it presents an opportunity, and each individual has the ability to be a leader, provided they have a clear vision, understanding, and agile. And being agile is super important. And I love that image of the carpet moving and you being able to balance on it. So I'm thinking Aladdin, and that kind of it brings up that imagery, but it is really super. It is super effective, to have that image in my head, and to be able to balance accordingly. So thank you so much for your contribution today. I know we are running slightly over schedule. And we had to, if I can tend the Tian Esterhazy's apology. He from Hisense, he won't be able to connect. Unfortunately, he had to leave them. He had an urgent situation to attend to. So without further ado, it gives me the greatest of pleasure to introduce you to Janine Peterson, CEO of J9 Wines. And Janine is such a wonderful lady. I mean, she's my namesake, And I met her at an event, and she's a sparkle and such a wonderful addition to the Proud SA member family. Janine is wonderful. She's on WhatsApp. We have numerous calls, and I think that's Chris next to her, which is wonderful. I've never seen Chris before. So nice to see Chris, and I think it's Chris.
We talk so much.
You are just such trailblazers, and your ideas are phenomenal. You think big. You always think big, and localization is the key of everything that you do. And you are such a wonderful role model or an ambassador for the Proud SA campaign and a member company, very dear to my heart, and powerhouse women in the wine industry. And no doubt, everybody in this call must know of the woes and the challenges you have faced in this time. And the fact that you're still standing and going strong is really something to acknowledge and to say that we are so proud of you as a Proud SA member in terms of what you've achieved and continue achieving, because you have such a wonderful vision. So without further ado, over to you, ladies, and welcome.
Thank you, Janine, and thank you to the audience for joining us today. I mean, this has been a topic I think that the wine industry we've been through the most with national liquor bans, and then we on, then we off, then we in business, then we're not in business. It's just been a rough couple of months for businesses in general in the wine industry. In the J9 camp, I would say that we adapted, because it's either adapt or die, and death ain't an option in this camp. So we adapted quite easily. And the first lockdown, I think, Chris? Yeah. We went in and we saw it coming from Asia already, because we were following the story. And Chris was like, Janine, let's get some mask and hand sanitizer, and we're going to make this packets for the call centers. And I was like, Chris, why?
I am too pretty to die, guys. I'm not dying. We did not come here to die.
I was asking Chris, why are we doing these packages? And then literally a week later, the president announced, and we had orders coming in from call centers and corporates for our hygiene packs. And that kept us afloat for the time that alcohol was banned. And then when we got unbanned, we managed to get back into business, and then we got banned again. With immediate effect. I think everybody had a shocker when it came through, and it said with immediate effect. And when the president said those words, I could hear South Africa just shaking. And the wine industry, literally, our phones were blowing up, and everybody was in shock. For that second ban. But when we came out of it, we came out stronger.
Let's talk for a moment about going through it. I think we were on the brink of having our first official staff member, one entire PA that could do it all for us. We had our first office.
Yes,
remember?
We had our first office.
We got a deal because they saw COVID probably coming. So I think it was that. And we had that in the space of a month.
Yes.
Then we hit COVID, and then you could see the morale just go down. And Janine and I moved into a space where we needed to be leaders to ourselves and how would I be a leader to myself in this moment? So Janine and I, we just kept on motivating each other. We were on calls for 8 hours a day, ensuring we're constantly moving, because if we don't move, we're going to die again. And everybody moved into the survival mode. We didn't want to fall into that ugliness of the survival mode. People started getting ugly and ruthless, and things started wavering, because now the uncertainty was so overwhelming. And we just needed to be that for each other. How are we leaders to each other? And that was something that took us out of our depth. We're a 4.5-year-old company now, so it really took us out of our depth. But on the other hand, Janine, we have been to Asia, so every time we came back, we felt like South Africa was a bit behind. And what COVID did for us, COVID actually put this foot on the petrol and allowed everybody to go online, from dating to shopping to everything. So that allowed us just to move out of our frustration
Yeah, and just the pace that things were working and that we were moving at was a bit faster.
Yes.
I would say things that normally would take months in South Africa now took 3 to 4 weeks to get done.
Yes.
So COVID also sort of put that into perspective for South Africa, that we can no longer work at the pace that we are working.
Yes.
And that was one of the learnings South Africa as a whole took to this, that guys, we got to keep moving, and we're going to have to move at a faster pace that we were moving.
Yes.
So,
and then after lockdown, we had the privilege of taking on 5 students from Stellenbosch University.
Yeah.
It was our first intern take-in. It was our first 5 staff.
That was a biggie.
And carrying, learning to run the business, ensuring we are being taught and learning about leadership, finding the proper mentors who's there for the right reason, so that we could constantly go back to our staff and ensure that we are building their CVs as well. But keeping them motivated, because for them, they were 19, 20, 21, 22 to 23. And to them, the reality was COVID took away my whole entire life.
To them, it was a big deal. And they were studying WSET level 2 at the time. And they felt that they were taken out of class, and that experience was taken away from them.
It was pretty traumatic for them. It was really traumatic to see the what do you call them? The X and the Z, right? X and
the Generation
X and Generation Z. For us to be so exposed to them and understand and see how they carry things. And I can tell you guys, we had 5 women of color here, and we are so strong. Women are so strong, and it's so amazing to see that a woman in the 1950s, how strong she was, and now knowing that strength and just
how females have evolved,
and owning that. And we had 5 plus the 2 of us were 7, and it was so nice to get feedback. So people, you can actually go onto our page as well on Facebook, and you can go through our Friday live calls. And our first call, we spoke about how much they've come out of the shell, because COVID put them in a shell of scaredness. That was very evident.
Confidence dropped so
it was
much.
So dropped. It was so low. And it was so great to see they've just finished their course with us now. This week past, we allowed them to go on this journey with us, with new labels, upgrading for our wine itself. Then also our tasting room that is in Stellenbosch. That was something that we opened up over there, and we could do it with them and give them that as well. So that was pretty interesting. And they graduate very soon, and it really put us in uncomfortable positions.
It did. Managing them and it was our first time having to properly manage people. And for me personally, I'm an introverted extrovert, and I had to come out of my comfort zone and be able to now impart knowledge. And for me, at first, it was really difficult, because I was like, aren't you supposed to get this? And then I realized that no, you need to teach and you need to impart, and there's a certain way that you need to be able to, as a leader, being able to impart that knowledge to the next generation.
And also in individuals as well. So we found that a lot was taken from us, but we were rewarded a lot. And each and every person
was different.
Different homes, different backgrounds, different issues, different ways in handling COVID and the after effects of COVID, and still living in the fear and the reality of, I'm too young to die. And this is the real problem.
That is.
And that's so scary to see a 19-year-old girl saying, I'm too scared to die. And, and you having to also come and say, let's make the most of where we at now. Let's take control of what we have now. And that was constantly bringing them back. Let's not go too far. Let's come bring it back, because all we have is the now. So
we made them conscious that you only have control over the moment. And that was a big thing for them, because they were so caught up in what's going to happen tomorrow, what's happening in 2 weeks' time, what's happening in a month's time. And we were just like, you only have control over the now.
That's right.
And we brought in a whole lot of other elements as well. We brought in meditation. We brought in a little bit of yoga, and just bringing them out of their shell. And and for us personally, we've learned a lot as well. Spiritually, we've grown. Emotionally, we've grown. I wouldn't say physically, thank God. We're still the same size. We hope. But yeah, we have put a little video clip together for you guys to give you guys a little bit of an insight on our journey that we had with the ladies from the PYDA. So I'm just going to ask a technical team, could you please just
Are you in?
put up our little video so that everybody can see our ladies. Are we ready?
Hello, Siri Tang An. Hello.
There we go.
Sitting right here, student from PYDA. So we're gonna go live today at 2 p.m. with J91. Tune in on Facebook.
Okay, cool guys, where are you? Okay, great. Tell us, Keelan, what have you guys been doing thus far? What have you been doing specifically?
So I was sticking labels onto the bottles and also cleaning bottles and boxing.
Cool. Yourself, Diana?
I was also boxing and also taking the wine. I was doing the boxing and also taking the wines that are being labeled to the pallet.
All right. Okay.
So terug aan de tijdspringer en dit is best fun.
Hello everybody, I'm Janine Peterson from Janine Wine, and yeah, this is our beautiful tasting room. Come through this summer.
I feel so great at life is so weird.
I'll see you for a rainy day with Janine Wine. It's going to be in CBD on the rooftop. Hopefully you can buy here and see where the relationship goes to calm down and alcohol, and we like to add the social aspect of it, which is also.
That's safe. That's the good. I say that it is ages. That's why I say that for ages. They look like young kids. Why are you getting young kids? Oh, that's a nice picture, hey?
So yes, everybody, that's our team, as you can see. So we had Keelan, we had Zianda, we had Sinazo, and then we had Inga. That was part of our team. And Zinzi, yes. So each of them played their role in this crazy, crazy time. And yeah, I think that's all from the J9 Wine side.
Yeah, I think, yeah, we've also come to the point where we decided that we know the problem. We're all living the reality of the problem. When this team came in, they came in and we said we are here to encourage leaders. There's not enough jobs in this country for us not to be leaders. So that was something that we are happy to impart in them, and we're happy to say the first one of them got their official job already, and we're looking forward to employing the other 4 as well. And you know, due diligence and hard work is all it takes, commitment as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, guys.
It's wonderful creating jobs during these difficult times. You are to be commended. Thank you so much for your contribution. And I think for us, you know, Janine, when I see your number on my phone, I think drive and passion. And you just said it now. Keep moving. That is so important. That is so important. And for me, that's the key. Keep moving and diversify to grow. I think that's the key takeaway that J9 Wines brings to the table. And you know, the beautiful message is at the helm of it all, it's people, which is exactly what our session is about today. So ladies, thank you very, very much I'm going to, sure, thank you. Please do stay on board. We'll check the Q&A session to see if there are any questions being referred to you. So thank you very, very much.
Yeah.
And then thank you to our new member, which is the Bread Box Bakery. And we have on the call Matlogonolo Ledwaba, who's the MD of the Bread Box Bakery. Matlogonolo, everybody in lockdown has become an expert baker. Looking at Facebook, I'm sure you noticed. And I mean, when I went to the retail shelves on my Sunday, wearing my face shield and my mask to make sure I'm protected, there were times when I couldn't find flour, I couldn't find baking powder or other baking products. So I would love to hear from your account in terms of what did you do to rebuild your team during this pandemic? So over to you. Look forward to hearing from you.
Good afternoon, everyone. It looks like my connectivity is a bit unstable, but I think we won't have a problem. I think Janine has already done an introduction. I think for me, it was just when I had the president said on the 26th of March, it's lockdown. I think I got into a freeze mode. And again, a month before, I just launched another extension of the business, which is our studio. And I think for me, I got into a space where I just didn't know what to think, because that extension of our business required people to group together to be, so it meant that we had to close it all together up until it was eased. So it was a bit of uncertainty for me. But I think in the midst of everything, when lockdown was announced, I think I thought, I sat back and asked myself, why did you leave corporate and why did you start this? And I think for me was the purpose why I started that kept me going. And I think how I addressed everything is that I leveraged on my corporate relationships, especially like corporates that are around Midrand. And I just need, in everything else, I just need to thank Vodacom Financial Services, because they became a big brother to us, or a big sister to us. I knocked on doors because I looked at people that I employed, and majority of them are like breadwinners. Majority of them were people that I literally took from streets and taught them how to bake. And I looked at them and I said, if I give up, where are they going to go? It was not easy. And I started knocking on doors, and fortunately for us, then Vodacom heeded our call. They assisted us in terms of pushing our marketing, and we became visible. And I think in your introduction, you said you saw flowers running out and yeast and everything else. And I think that got me thinking. I worked hard behind the scenes, and we ended up creating new products, which if you look on our website, we've got Magwinya mix, because people were making, they were making horrible mixes, and they couldn't make a simple thing like Magwinyas. So for me, it was an opportunity that I saw, rather than sitting and looking back and feeling sorry for ourselves to say, no, we can't operate, people are not coming. And I took that time and I took the opportunity to say, what can I do? And then I looked at the trends, and especially of people trying to make bread, and an idea came to me. And then I did a mix. People couldn't do a simple dumpling mix. They were always asking for a recipe. So we did a dumpling mix that you just put water in it. We did a scone mix. People were struggling to say what type of, or how much baking powder can I do that? Can I put onto flour, and the ratios and. So we did the scone mix, and we did the Magwinya mix. We did the cake mix. So we managed to produce 5 products, which are actually doing very well in the market, considering the situation that we find ourselves in. So we really found ourselves in a place where we say, what is it that we can do to make sure that we don't close down? It was not easy. we have massive loss of income. Most of our clients were corporates. We no longer were servicing them because they were working from home. So it was such a difficult task for us. And as a leader in the business, and then you've got people that are looking up to you, and they come to you, and then they ask you, what is it that we can do to make this situation better? Let us try, let us come here every day. And then you had others who were like, oh, my life is at risk, I can't come to work. And, you know, and then I think in the midst of everything else, we find ourselves in a very difficult situation, especially when it comes to personnel. You know, some people were very, they were not willing to pull the weight, and obviously using COVID as an excuse to say they're at risk. They're, you know, so you had to make an unpopular decision to say, it's fine if you stay home and understand that you are not comfortable, but if you stay home, it means that it's no work, no pay, because I have to find somebody in your space to come and do that because we don't have money. So, and then you find those kind of, and then I had the others who were saying, we can do whatever that we can do. And then you have to find yourself also getting your hands dirty, doing the door, everything else, so that you keep on moving. And some people were falling off in terms of employees because, you know, you had to at least cut a little bit of their salaries. But I think what again helped us as the UIF tiers, where they actually relieved us in terms of our salary bill. So that also helped a great deal. So, and another thing that made me realize that we really as small business have problems is that we hire young adults straight from varsity, and especially in the industry that I'm in, like straight from culinary schools. And the problem that we have is that they haven't been through work readiness programs. And I think for me, maybe as somebody who has spent most of my time in corporate, it was a bit difficult because I had to spend most of the time with them now during COVID, because some of the stuff that I do, I couldn't do because everything else was closed. So, and then we checked how is it that we can help them, because we are not busy. And some of them went into depression. Some of them were not coping at all because it was anxiety. They didn't know whether they're going to have a job tomorrow morning. You know, it was what they kept on asking us to say, do I still have a job? Are you going to retrench? So we try by all means not to cut jobs with everything that we had. And it was not easy for us at all. So we did everything in our power to make sure that we go with the trends. We researched, we went online, we started an online shop, I think, which made us very visible. We joined other forums. We tried to create new products, looking at especially the trends of people. What is it that they're doing on social media? What is it that they're baking? How do we make their life easier at home? You know, so we created new products that I think in the current situation, we can say they're doing very well. So instead of sitting back and actually feeling sorry and saying, because we know that we didn't create the pandemic, we created products that we think would be suitable for people that are sitting at home, and they would be nice. And also we created products thinking that they would put families together. I mean, people baking together, doing magwinyas together, doing all things together. So we really put a thought process in our products, in everything that we did, but it worked. And the biggest issue is I think the topic, rebuilding your team after crisis. It hasn't been easy, and some people thought, I really don't know sometimes what was going through their minds. And I think for me, COVID has tested every milligram in my body, every tissue. And also, I mean, the kitchen can test your character. You know, you can find yourself screaming on your own inside because, you know, things are not happening the way they're supposed to happen. So that was COVID. for us. And I think another thing that was problematic, I think, for us during COVID was absenteeism, where people would stay away from home and say, you know what, I think I've got COVID. I'm coughing, my throat is sore. And you have to sit back and really ask, do I move on or do I close up until that time that, the stages are eased. So I had to make unpopular decisions. And I think in everything else, we've got a good story to tell during COVID. And I think under the circumstances, we managed to pull through, and we did well. And I think what saved us also is that there was demand for bread during lockdown, because when lockdown was announced, we closed, I think, for 2.5 weeks, and then started getting calls for people saying, we need bread to take to orphanages, and then we started then getting courage to work, and then we see people having hope to say, at least there's something that we're doing. So it was not all bad, but it's still very slow for us. It's still, so with my employees, I had to find a wellness programs for them, because most of them were going through the most, and I think anxiety was taking over every day, not knowing whether they're going to have a job tomorrow, and even for myself, and when they go through that wellness, I went on that journey with them, and unfortunately some of them couldn't stay with us because they just felt that they were not safe. They were being exposed because the nature of the business that you do, we have to interact with a whole lot of people. But for me, the wellness that we did for our employees really assisted, in rebuilding them, because sometimes when you hear assurance from somebody else, then they tend to at least be at ease. So we really tried everything in our power to make sure that we keep the business. We leveraged on our corporate relationships. We really had good and bad times during COVID. We cried, we laughed, we did everything in our power to make sure. And I think another thing that helped us is that when we closed our studio, so what we then decided to do is that we've got a kitchen to use, and then we approach certain businesses around the area, and people we know, to say that people who don't have anything to eat, we've got facilities, we've got the kitchen. And then I think that gave us visibility, because people were like, oh, okay, we didn't know that there is this place. And people started coming, coming to buy your custom made bread, because I mean, for places like Woolies, they would want that custom made bread, but the delivery was, so we leveraged on those kind of small things where, for us, it was easy to deliver because we didn't have so much volume. So we personalized every experience that when the customer came to us. So it really worked for us. So we used our kitchen to feed the poor. And I think 3 times a week, we were feeding 120 kids. And it went on to, then we realized that there are adults that needed food. Then we kept on knocking on doors to say, I mean, we've got the facilities where we can cook for people. And then we realized that giving people food every day and cooking for them is not sustainable. What is it that then we do to make sure that they sustain? And then we embarked on a program where we take these women from streets and saying, we can teach you a skill on how to bake, so that at least you can go home and do something, whether you sell in the corner of your streets. But I think the challenge also there was, we didn't have capacity to take everybody to be able to teach them how to bake and do other things. But we try our best under the circumstances. And sometimes the challenges that comes with doing these things is that people think then that, the business is doing well, you have the money, you have, like things like family, when they see you giving people food and everybody comes to you, and if you can't, it's problematic for you personally, because then they say you can give other people, but you can't give us. So we really had to find ways to balance the work, personal, and other relationships that we had. But in the bigger scheme of things, I can say that we have a good story to tell, and I still think that we will. We're still going to do good things in future. I think for me, the difficult question is, how do I then rebuild my team after the crisis? And I think I'm doing the best that I can to do. We're still creating wellness programs for our staff so that they're able to perform to the best of their abilities. And we're partnering with people. And I think the bigger thing for me is collaboration, because we have seen what collaboration with other small businesses can do for us. And then what we did then is that we created a forum that we call Tuesday Power Talk, where entrepreneurs, we come together, we talk about how do we navigate the crisis, how do we scale up in the midst of a crisis? What does scaling up mean to us? And then how do we then adopt to this? So it really helped us rebuild everything else, even our teams. So we come together almost every second Tuesday. It's a group of entrepreneurs, homegrown, that we meet, we share ideas, we help each other from strategy to business plan to everything. And those entrepreneurs that we come together, we collaborate in everything that you do. Because when you come to our bakery, you'll find that I've got ginger that is done by somebody else. I've got honey that is done by somebody else. And those are quality products. And then you've got, so those kind of things actually helped us. People come and they come, they said, I can find peanut butter here, and then they said, oh, and then bread, and then somebody gets peanut butter, they get bread, and then they buy scones, and then they buy khamere. So we've got tea people that are doing tea crafters, and then we sell that tea in our shop. So it really helped us to navigate through everything. So it for me, what helped us is collaboration, leveraging on our corporate relationship and knocking on doors. And I think ever since I became a member of Proudly South Africa, I've sent, I'm that kind of a girl, like out knocking your door till you say no to me. I don't give up easily. I use every opportunity and every platform that I can to make sure that we grow our business. And I think one thing that also helped us is that ever since we joined Proudly South Africa, I mean, the benefits thereof that comes with being part of Proudly South Africa. And I think a lot of people don't know what is it that they can get from Proudly South Africa. And I think for us as new members, we were like, wow, so we didn't know. So we end up even sharing to other members or people that have been part of this platform for a very long time. They said, no, we didn't know. So those kind of things have actually helped us to navigate and go through this pandemic. And we don't know. And like Happy said, I've always said, and I think I've always believed in, like, we need to be the difference that we want to see in a workplace. And I believe that I have demonstrated that to the best of my abilities, and even the employees have demonstrated that. So it has been an awesome, painful journey, if I can say that in one sentence. It has been awesomely painful. And I think we've got a lot of lessons. And I think this is a topic that requires the whole day where people come together and talk about it, because I think we can get learnings from each and everyone to say, then how do we then navigate? And I think it's been painfully awesome at the same time. So we really have grown in our own right. We have actually managed to navigate, and we have actually managed to salvage some of our team members and actually give them courage for what is left of. And I think we're still going to try and work harder, and so that we don't end up closing down or anything that is, unprecedented to happen to us. Thank you.
Matlogonolo, thank you so much for your time today and sharing with us your experiences. And if I can, my takeaway from what you've shared with us, wow, awesomely painful or painfully awesome. And you mentioned both. And, it really is, it says a lot. And it talks about, when you were speaking, what came to mind is that quote that says, a diamond is merely a lump of coal that did well under pressure. And I think that applies to your experiences in terms of the MD of a company who's come from a corporate world just as Happy has, and or happy experience, her own business, etc. But yours is the other way around, and just relaying with us your experiences and what needed to be done for you to survive. And for me, it's the key points really are leveraging relationships. So that's with your clients. You spoke about your clients, and also then collaboration then with your employees, and really to diversify your business. And in order to create new products and services, in order to bring people together. I think that's a beautiful message that you shared with us. So thank you very, very much for your time. I want to appeal to everybody on the call. If you've got any questions, please pop them in the Q&A box. I am going to, before I do the closing remarks and the vote of thanks, and also answer or ask the panelists to answer your questions, I'd like to give the floor now to Happy Ngidi, our Proudly SA's Chief Marketing Officer, just to give you a bit of insight into the campaign, and it will just tie up, and it really talks to Matlogonolo's viewpoint about being a member of the campaign. So talking about that with a beautiful visual presentation. So thank you. Over to my colleague, Happy.
Thank you so much, Janine. So just prior to playing a 60-second video, the question is, how do you rebuild your team after a pandemic? My answer to that is that we don't know. None of us know. I don't think any of us can comfortably sit here and say, I know how to do it, because we don't know. We're still in the middle of the pandemic. Maybe beyond the pandemic, 6 months later, even a year later, when we've gone through this phase, we will have learned and we'll come up with ways to how to constructively build the team. We're all in this together. None of us were prepared for it. No one knows how to build the team except what we have shared with you from what we now know. But the time will come to really build our teams again at some point. May I please request that in light of the festive season that is upon us, we've just gone through Black Friday, but in light of the festive season that is now upon us, as well as back to school, we have a campaign at Proudly South African, which is the essence of why we exist. A campaign that reminds South Africans about the importance of buying local and supporting local, the importance of supporting the Red Box run by Matlogonolo, with everything that she shared with you. Even if it means buying the dumpling dough, buying the scone dough, buying the magwinya dough, or setting up a birthday celebration for like 5 people, 10 people, and going out there to eat from there. Supporting Janine, Peterson, and the J9 team, buying wines from them, supporting High Sense, by buying flat screen TVs, and we hope you did over the Black Friday frenzy, but also for the festive season and beyond that. Back to school is upon us, but just supporting all of those companies and members who shared their stories with us today, and many of those who were not on this platform. So Game Time Mzansi is really about that. It's about the fact that, like in a soccer game, when the second half is about to begin. So our second half, in our context, is reviving our economy as a country in light and in support of the President's economic recovery plan, And for us, game time is really about that. How are we going to collectively revive our economy? It's the second half is about to begin. Please, may I ask Technical to play the 60-second game time in Mzansi commercial.
The second half is about to begin. We need to change the scoreboard. It's time for all of us to pause and rethink the game plan in order to save the future. I call on all of us to be game changers because greatness isn't reserved only for some people. By buying local, we're choosing to create jobs and sustain the ones we have. Time and time again, South Africans have taken destiny into their own hands, creating products that the rest of the world wanted to buy. See, the world remembers about us, but we sometimes forget. But it's time for change. Let's all buy local. It's game time. Zanzi.
Local is lekker.
Everyday decisions shape our future.
We hope the sound was great and you heard the message. We call on all of us to be game changers, us included as proudly South African, all of us to be game changers, to then begin to be the difference that we want to see as a people. Thank you, everybody. Back to you, Janine.
Thank you very much, Happy. I don't see that there are any questions at the moment. So if you'd all allow me, I would just like to give the vote of thanks. But actually, before I do that, I think it would be nice for me just to summarize the key takeaways from all of our speakers today. So be the difference you want to see in the corporate place, in the workplace, in the corporate space. And you do that with the qualities of empathy and kindness. And with each challenge, there is an opportunity is presented. And each individual has the ability to be a leader, provided you have a clear vision and understanding and present a sense of agility. And also spoke about coaching styles, so or rather situational management styles, and looking specifically at the coaching style. And then to repurpose your business through your drive and your passion. And as Janine Peterson said, keep moving to diversify and grow. And at the helm of their focus is really to help people, to bring people on board. And then finally, leveraging relationships and collaborations to create new products, to service your clients in order to bring people together. And that's all in the name of survival. And I think the speakers here today just showcased an opportunity in terms of what South Africans can achieve when they put their minds to it. And it's really a celebration of your achievements here today. So thank you very, very much, everybody. I'd just like to thank you also to our speakers, wonderful, brave people. Thank you very much. Our Chief Marketing Officer, Ms. Happy Ngidi, and then also Mandisa Tobela, the Deputy Chair of the Institute of Stakeholder Relations of Southern Africa, Ms. Janine Peterson, CEO of J9 Wines, and Chris, and then also Matlochanola Ledwaba, Managing Director of the Bakery Box. And thank you very much for your contributions today. It's such a beautiful, so many beautiful, uplifting stories, given that it's been such a tough year. And to our team in the back, thank you very much to Bridget, to Oratile, to Tato, to Darren and Kumzile. Your contribution is so appreciated. Thank you very, very much to the team. So that's all from our side. I think there's a beautiful toolkit, and I'm going to ask Happy if there's a way for us to just collate the information and share the toolkit far and wide. We'll work with the team in seeing how this can be achieved. If you'd like to contact Proudly South African, please do so. We're available on the email address info@proudlysa.co.za. You can call us on 011 327 7778, or connect with us on the web, www.proudlysa.co.za, and you can also connect with us on all the social media platforms. So thank you very, very much, everybody, and wishing you all well until the next webinar.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you.
Goodbye, everybody.